I'm done. Let me begin with a question. What does that song bring to you? What thoughts and feelings, what messages come to you? I'm just asking for a few people to share. Despair.
We all hurt.
Mm.
I got a sense of the love we offer.
Hope.
Inclusion. Hope.
Yeah. We can feel all those things: despair, bearing the unbearable. And under that, the hope. Under that, the love that allows us to carry that and to continue on. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. During the week, for the next 6 weeks, I will be a hospice chaplain. And it's a time where people feel despair sometimes, where all the burdens that they carry, and so often the burdens that they feel on behalf of the world are so present. And just the other day, Friday, in preparation for today, I shared this reading with a patient and his family, a very, very devout Catholic. And we just talked about it. And so I just wanted to share some of the conversation that we had to begin about this reading. And I called on, back a long time ago in my seminary days, when Karl, Rahner, and Edward Schillebeeckx were the BTOC, the big theologians on campus. And they were instrumental in Vatican II, right, in really shaping these documents in a vision that the kingdom in heaven and our work is not down the road up in the sky, but it was in community. It was in all of us. The grace has always been with us in whatever situation we're in. And they would interpret this passage as revealing how Christ continues to be present and active in history through the Spirit and through this body. Schillebeeckx questioned bodily resurrection, questioned the hierarchy of the church, which was scandalous. Rahner brought up the idea of being an anonymous Christian. And so that was part of our conversation, because they talked about how different family members from different Christian branches can be so mean. And those people might judge people who don't have a particular faith tradition. And we talked about, the bottom line is love. Love is the verb, love that connects all of us. So just to reflect a bit about the reading, the promise of Spirit in Rahner's theology is that God's grace is always here in the ever-present moment. And so when Jesus promises the Spirit, his understanding is that this is an empowerment of humanity for participating in God's saving work. And this ascension, this Jesus leaving the world, the two who said, "Why are you looking up in the clouds?" The cloud does not represent this material leaving, but it's a mystery. It's Christ being present in a new way. And so we don't stare up into heaven for our kingdom. We look around us. And so Jesus commissions them to be witness to the ends of the earth. And so Rahner says that this ascension marks the beginning of the church's mission in the world through the Spirit. Schillebeeckx also talks about ascension, but not in absence, again, but as presence. Christ becomes present through the community, inspired by the Spirit. And this gathering with Mary and the others speak to inclusion, speak to being rooted in faithfulness. And prayer is the preparation for action in the world. And so Schillebeeckx would say that salvation is when people experience liberation and compassion and human flourishing. And so the Spirit promised empowers us as Christ followers to take up our ministry among the poor and excluded and suffering. And so both interpret this time as the Spirit-led mission of the church to reflect the cosmic presence of Christ, the living community that continues Jesus' liberating mission in history. And so it's not a departure, this ascension, but it's the beginning of a deeper and more universal presence of Christ through the Spirit in community. And so I love community. I have been parts of lots of communities that have changed my life, that continue to shape me. And I think of them as the apostles. You know, the apostles started out with an experience, a revelation, a relationship that changed them. And then they gathered, and they worked out their shared experiences and argued, no doubt, and were competitive, and were sometimes misinformed. And then there was the teaching. You know, so Jesus taught, and they learned, and then they had their mission. And I think of this experience, and it's not perfectly linear, but that idea that we start with our experience. I certainly do. Come to church with my experience of the divine, my own rootedness in prayer. I imagine you pray in various ways, have meditation practices, whether it's centering prayer or something that is a different kind of prayer. Prayer for, prayer of thanks, prayer of awe. That we are always seeking this divine. And that we come and we share. Now I know that some people come here to see their friends, and that's part of community. And we have dinner groups, and that's a way to, again, build those relationships. And that we share with one another kind of what we are learning and how that would lead us then to serve. But not all communities are the same. One of the early communities I was a part of was in college. The one in the bottom row with the dark shirt and the hair. So I won't share stories about that. Well, so we were drawn together by our experience of feeling special, of getting into the school, and we joined the fraternity to have a place to live. It was practical and it was social. And there was some kind of teaching about what it meant to be a part of that group, and there was a secret handshake and that kind of stuff. But we didn't really serve or do anything else. It was a temporary gathering of people. And then I was a part of a different community. And I'm the one with pigment in the bottom row. So it was a similar, we had these shared experiences of the divine, of feeling a call. And so we went to this place that's a bit institutional. We shared in this community, the schedule and prayers, and going out into our placements to share our own understanding and experience with the hope that we would be spiritual companions with others, and also to increase the numbers, because that was part of the group. You know, the teaching was that all interfaith groups, are equal, but we're just a little bit more. And then I went to Chaplaincy before I got ordained, to live, because I heard about and wanted to know more about liberation theology. And That was the understanding that the scripture means nothing if it doesn't relate to our lives to help us be free, because Jesus was about and continues to be about liberation. And people shared everything. It was a poor place in the jungles where people would take refugees from Guatemala and El Salvador who were being hunted by death squads. And they shared the little they had to help people be safe. And they would sing this song. I hope you'll learn it with me. But right now it goes. Comunidad, comunidad, cuánto alegría no encuentro en ti. Mi corazón encuentra amor, y mis hermanos caridad, y mis hermanos caridad. So community, how much happiness I find in you. My heart finds love, and my siblings, charity, compassion. That shaped me, that changed. I didn't go back to the seminary. I started teaching and found a self-organizing community. Someone had put an ad in the Catholic Worker paper, people who want to live in community. A Catholic worker, so we were all Catholic. We were drawn together by this deep desire to live in our faith and to share. And so we shared everything we had. We pooled our money. We rented a house to take in refugees. Did all kinds of protests. Had our phone bugged. It was before cell phones, so we could tell that we were getting bugged. And this is kind of probably the second year. We didn't give ourselves that name, the Venice Christian Community, just that we started to do things and donate, and then we started getting mail with that name. You'll notice me in the kind of the bluish shirt, and behind me would be Philomena. And you'll see a baby. What I love about this photo, the little baby has this little hand up. So Linda is a physician, and Lou, her husband behind her, the light blue shirt, he's an attorney. So this community met. We prayed together. We created liturgy. We collaborated with other groups who shared some values about social justice. And that shaped me. And I'll just skip ahead to a community that I'm a part of in addition to Pilgrim. Years ago, when I was at the University of San Diego, we had conferences, and we were helping people to understand the collective unconscious in groups, in organizations. And more people are, I think, thinking of the collective unconscious as spirit, right? As what binds us. And so this is a group of people that I meet with every Saturday morning. We're all drawn from different traditions, one Baha'i, two from the Jewish faith and practicing Buddhism, one who began in Iran, one who began as a Buddhist, one who is a Catholic priest, not of the traditional line of ordination, and myself. And we're drawn together by our desire to seek the divine, the sacred. And we have a community that supports each other and argues together about what is it that we can do to serve and to help people birth consciousness, birth an experience of relationship with the divine. And so I know not all communities are the same. Epstein, had a community. And I think about Safe Church Sunday and the protection of children. That was a horrific and ongoing cycle of exploitation of children. Kind of unspeakable. And when I think about Safe Church, or protecting people in organizations, there's the individual who may be vulnerable at the center. And in a good case, we have people around who are aware and able to intervene if that person is threatened, if they're experiencing harassment or exploitation or some kind of abuse. And there could be some policy around that, and we have that. And we have a body, a protective body in us. So I just want to ask if the people in the response team could stand. We have Madison, Claire, Chris Walsh, Ken Breeding, myself, and Josh is not in the room. But we're all a mini community within our community to be a resource of protection and intervention as needed. And that can be for vulnerable children or adults. And it's a kind of a model for what we can do as a church beyond these walls. The thing about having a policy and even a team who is designated to protect is it doesn't work if we have either oblivious or guilty bystanders. If people who may have a sense that something is wrong, have a gut feeling or something that they see and they don't intervene in some way, if they don't address that situation or let someone else know. And then the horrific parallel to Epstein and all the many ways that people are abused in groups, in systems, is that we have so many bystanders, so many people who do not speak up, who do not risk what they might lose, that influence or that connection to power. How is it that in that place, was it the legal counsel under the Obama administration was in frequent contact, Deepak Chopra, Larry Summers, the Harvard president? How are all these people who have so much still seeking something from this person, whatever that was, and then not saying anything? And so my ministry began through that experience of a registered sex offender wanting to be a part of a community and triggering the trauma that people carried within the congregation that had not been acknowledged or healed. Right? And through that, we developed a policy. Through that, we developed a response team and awareness and education, and goes on. And it's in that community then that we can be healed. And so why is community? Well, one of the things it says that not all communities are just nice and easy. The passage at the end of Acts where they prayed together and they share everything, it sounds like a spa. Right? It sounds like it's so nice, you know. But reality is communities are not like that. I am competitive. I know plenty of people have different ideas. Some of us cheer for the Dodgers. Some of us cheer for St. Louis, who's out of the room. And we can get along. We can have love and connection despite differences. And that's silly, but the reality is, why is it important for us when we have different beliefs, when we disagree, to be in relationship? You know, because this is a microcosm. It's important because as we grapple in our time with the violence of wars and the attacks on refugees, as we struggle to combat authoritarianism in our country and around the world, as we seek to care for those who are most impacted by the destruction of our social support systems and the implementation of harmful and inhumane laws and the deterioration of our environment. In this moment in history, wrestling with the question of how we are in relationship or disagree isn't an intellectual idea, exercise. It's central to us. How can we be rooted in love and see our others who we disagree with or really, really don't like as part of us? This is central to the survival of us as a nation, as a species, as a world. So community, shared ministry is an invitation to be in relationship, even when it's hard. For all of us to be of service, to help the world be better. Maybe you can join me. Comunidad, comunidad, cuánto alegría encuentro en ti. Mi corazón encuentra amor y mis hermanos caridad, y mis hermanos caridad. Pilgrim has 4 pillars, right? And I think of these as in that same kind of concentric circle. That instead of experience, I would put spirituality, prayer, powerful, rooted prayer with, how is it? The ground of our being, with the source of our life and our ongoing existence. And then community around is our experience. Mentioned that a bit, but progressive theology. Let me ask you some questions. Is progressive theology the kind of theology that says, by giving money to me or to us, God will bless us? No. Is it the kind of theology that says your material wealth is a sign of your blessing by God, that says, oh, that's it? No. Is it the kind that says, just say these words and believe in your heart and you're saved and you can continue to hate people or withdraw from helping the hungry or those who need medical care and those who are rejected? No. Is it the kind that says God is on our side? Is it the kind of Christianity that says God has written every word in the Bible as if people had nothing to do with translating and mistranslating and decontextualizing and curating and selecting which books belong? Is it the kind of Christianity that says this is a history book or a science book or a Ouija board that predicts the future? Progressive theology sees the living view of Scripture. Yes? It's not a flawless, inerrant text. It shows wisdom. It's not literal. Progressive theology has an emphasis on orthopraxy. Yes? Valuing right practice, acting with compassion and love over orthodoxy, holding the exact correct theological or doctrinal beliefs. Progressive theology is about radical inclusivity. Yes. We welcome and affirm people of all backgrounds, specifically advocating for the LGBTQ community and diverse genders, identities within the church. Progressive theology embraces the questions. Believing that honest questioning, doubt, and intellectual engagement hold more value than adhering to a strict, unquestionable absolute. And progressive theology has a pluralistic perspective, recognizing that truth can be found in other faith traditions and that God's Spirit is not limited exclusively to Christianity. So this leads to social justice. What do we do? Progressive Christianity understands that if we want peace, if this is what following Jesus' command means to love one another, that love is a verb and we bring peace through justice. As Jesus challenged systems of oppression, religious suppression, political oppression, cultural oppression, we must transform the systems of oppression. As Brian Stevens from the Equal Justice Initiative notes, the opposite of poverty is not wealth, the opposite of poverty is justice. And we can think about that to say the opposite of monoculturalism is not, and colonialism and white supremacy is not necessarily diversity, but justice. The opposite of exclusion is not simply inclusion, but justice. And understanding this, that the systems push us to look at our community, and understanding systems pushes us to look at our community and our surrounding community and our country and our world that has been denied justice. It has been attacked. Justice has been attacked. The vulnerable have been attacked. The act of that has been denied, and a narrative has been told that that's not happening. It's made some invisible. And so this prayer, come back to with the apostles, it was not simply for our own comfort. It was to prepare us to transform systems. Otto Scharmer is a social scientist. Theory U, I recommend. talks about the ways that we attack problems, first on a material level, on a systems level, and then on a level of our thinking, how we understand and we think things should be. But the real way to change is on a spiritual level, and that takes time. The apostles prayed. They were rooting themselves in their spiritual identity, in their spiritual connection. And they were attacked, and they needed to resist. Their experiences were denied, and they needed to tell their truth. And they had a narrative that also they had to fight against. They had to write a new story. And this idea of being attacked and then having denial and then having a narrative, does that remind you of anyone? There's a movie called The Apprentice. It was the story of how an attorney, Roy Cohen, mentored our current president. And those were the marching orders: attack, deny, control the narrative. And so how should we respond? What does God ask of us? That when under attack, or those who are vulnerable, we resist. When harm is denied, we expose. And when lies become the norm and the narrative, that we create a new narrative. So, our prayer must lead us to justice. When we can fund war but not health care, and fund prisons and ICE but not education and housing, when systems and power attack the vulnerable, we must resist. In a time of hate, love is an act of resistance. In a time of fear, faith is an act of resistance. In a time of misinformation, education is an act of resistance. In a time of poor leadership, community is an act of resistance. And when cruelty and greed and corruption is denied, we must speak the truth. When violence against black and brown bodies and sexual abuse is minimized or covered up, and dehumanization of women is normalized, we must expose the wrong. In this current war on Iran, the narrative is that a threat is actually an attack, that a capacity is actually a weapon, that anyone who doubts is weak, that diplomacy is actually appeasement, that peace is actually surrender. The Pope calls for dialogue, and it comes out that the Pope wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. So when the narratives sent out from this regime are confusing and untrue, when they reinforce the lie of white supremacy and colonialism and power over, we must write a new narrative of interdependence. This one. And the Talmud says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You're not obligated or obliged to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." And like the ancient prophets, we are dispatched back to the good work entrusted to us. It is the work of peacemaking. It is the work of truth-telling. It is the work of justice-doing. It is good work, but it requires our resolve to stay it even in the face of the forces to the contrary that are sure to prevail for a season. So spirituality and seeking the sacred may be our starting point, but it's not our ending point. The Dalai Lama said the next Dalai Lama will not be a person, but a sangha, a community. And so there's so much for us to do together to not despair. There's no us in this work without you. And that work is to be done until all are safe. Maybe you can join me. Comunidad, comunidad, cuánto alegría encuentro en ti. Mi corazón encuentra amor y mis hermanos caridad. Y mis hermanos caridad. Let the church say amen.